Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Are you looking for hope and inspiration? Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage and spend some time with us as we meet role models throughout church history and discuss how they can help us in our daily pilgrimage of life.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Our mission is to inspire you in your daily pilgrimage of life by introducing you to the communion of saints. I am Jason Nunez. I serve as Media Production Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Pilgrim Center of Hope, a Catholic ministry founded in 1993, with the mission of helping you walk your journey of daily life in hope with Christ and the Church. Socials with the Saints are opportunities to learn from role models of faith and from one another for fellowship, prayer, and receiving spiritual tools. Today, we will be shining a light on a prominent cardinal and reformer in the Catholic Church, St. Charles Borromeo. We are recording this podcast as a resource for those who cannot attend our in-person Socials with the Saints gathering. You are most welcome to join us on the third Thursday of every month in San Antonio, Texas. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org for more information about our in-person Socials with the Saints gatherings. Now, let's get to know St. Charles Borromeo. He was born on October 2nd, 1538, died November 3rd or 4th in the year 1584. His feast day is celebrated on November 4th. He was canonized by Pope Paul V in 1610, and he is the patron of bishops, cardinals, seminarians, catechists, catechumens, spiritual directors, spiritual leaders, persons with stomach and intestinal ailments such as ulcers, and also persons dieting and obese. Born in the castle of Verona, Italy, in the Alpine region along the shore of Lake Maggiore, to Count Gilbert Borromeo and his wife, Margaret Medici, Charles was the second of two sons in a family of 6. He demonstrated his love for the Church from a very young age. Recognizing his desire for an ecclesial career, his parents had him receive the clerical tonsure, the shaved head of a cleric, soon after he met the age requirement of 12. Charles was educated at a Benedictine abbey in Arona, the very property of which his paternal uncle turned over to him its considerable revenue. Charles instructed his father that any of the abbey's income exceeding his educational costs belonged to the poor. Because he had a slight speech impediment, Charles was thought to be a slow learner. He overcame that impediment, and as his academic and professional accomplishments later proved, he was brilliant. He went on to Milan for Latin studies. Mourning his father's death in 1554, Charles paused his education to manage his family's affairs. Afterward, he earned his doctorate in civil and canon law from the University of Pavia in 1559 at the age of 21. His mother's brother, the Cardinal of Medici, was elected pope that same year and took the name Pius IV. Now, Pius IV named Charles Cardinal Deacon of Milan, administrator of the vacant See of Milan at the age of 22, prior to Charles's presbyteral ordination. In 1560, Pius IV appointed Cardinal Borromeo Papal Secretary of State, which required him to remain in Rome for what turned out to be 4 years. His responsibility included serving as legate, a papal representative of Romagna, Bologna, the March of Ancona, protector of the Kingdom of Portugal, Lower Germany, and the Catholic cantons of Switzerland. Also placed under his protection were the Carmelites, Franciscans, the Canons Regular of the Holy Cross of Christ in Portugal, the Humiliati, the Brothers of Humility. He was also named supervisor over the Knights of Malta. In Rome, Borromeo lived austerely and worked tirelessly for the Church, founding the Vatican Academy for Literary Work. In 1562, he reassembled the Council of Trent for its third and final session, 10 years after it had been suspended, and kept it going until its end. He enforced its reforms and helped draft the Roman Catechism. When his older brother, Federico, died suddenly in 1562, Charles became head of his family. The family's wish was that he be laicized and marry, so that the Borromeo line would not die out. However, he resigned his family's position to become a priest. 3 months after his ordination, on December 7, 1563, he was ordained a bishop and on May 12, 1564, he became Archbishop of Milan. He also accepted the office of Grand Penitentiary, who assists the Pope in granting pardon of penitents who have committed very serious sins. Cardinal Borromeo served at the deathbed of his uncle, Pius IV. After the election of Pope Pius V, Borromeo was given permission to reside in Milan. Arriving in 1566, he immediately set about reforming and revitalizing his long-neglected diocese, which had not had a resident bishop in many years. The See of Milan was the largest Catholic archdiocese at that time and was rife with widespread corruption such as selling of indulgences. Cardinal Borromeo began reforming his diocese in his own household of close to 100 people, mostly clergy. He gave most of his income to charity, spending only what he needed for himself, shunning luxury and any form of ostentation. He established seminaries, oversaw the training of catechists, and reformed the clergy, allowing them a good salary and forbidding them to receive gifts, which were often bribes in disguise. He also established the confraternity of Christian doctrine in order to properly instruct children in the Catholic faith, for which he is considered the originator of Sunday schools. He is responsible for the establishment of 740 schools, the founding of a college in Pavia, the training of 3,000 catechists, and the education of 40,000 pupils. Borromeo is considered one of the great reformers of the Church, and along with St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Philip Neri, and St. Pope Pius V, one of the foremost pastoral theologians of the Counter-Reformation movement. Though the changes he instituted were not always well received, his reforms were eventually upheld as models. Charles Borromeo was not without controversy. Several religious orders opposed his reforms, most notably the Humiliati, a corrupt society which owned about 90 monasteries despite having only 170 members. A group of the Humiliati conspired to kill Borromeo. In 1569, Jerome Donati Farina, a Humiliati priest, was paid 40 gold pieces to shoot Cardinal Borromeo while he was in the chapel of his residence praying. He miraculously survived the failed attempt when the bullet failed to penetrate his clothing. In gratitude, Borromeo reconsecrated his life to God. He also came into conflict with civil authorities, in particular the governor of Milan. That, quote, conflict of jurisdiction, unquote, eventually involved the king, Philip II of Spain, and even the Pope. Ultimately, Borromeo prevailed when the king sided with him. While the conflict subsided, bad feelings remained, and he had powerful enemies. In 1570, Milan suffered a great famine. Borromeo himself fed 3,000 people every day for 3 months, which took a toll on his health. In 1572, he went to Rome for the election of Pope Gregory XIII. While there, he resumed his normal habits and his health recovered. Europe was then overwhelmed by one of the deadliest plagues in history, circa 1575 through 1577. While the governor and nobility led the city of Milan, Borromeo remained to care for the afflicted. Since there weren't enough diocesan priests to care for the people, he begged help from the superiors of religious orders and urged government officials to return to their posts. Borromeo used all his resources and even incurred huge debts on behalf of those afflicted. He organized the care and the provision of basic necessities for his people. Borromeo made an urgent plea to God to miraculously end the plague that had taken the lives of millions of people. His appeal was made in the name of the Holy Shroud, an ancient linen cloth believed to be the burial cloth of Christ. Borromeo accompanied his plea with the vow that he would make a pilgrimage on foot to venerate the shroud, which was in safekeeping of the royal house of Savoy in Chambry, France at the time. The great miracle was granted, but before Borromeo could honor his vow, the shroud was permanently transferred to Turin, the new capital of Savoy, where it remains today. The move may have occurred as a courtesy to Borromeo to shorten the arduous journey from Milan to Chambray. The political climate at that time also may have played a role in the decision. At the end of his 4-day pilgrimage, Borromeo's feet were bleeding profusely. After being welcomed by an official gun salute, by the Duke's infantry, he spent hours in the Duke's private chapel adoring the shroud. When the shroud was put on public display, Borromeo became so emotional that he was tongue-tied when he asked to say a prayer for the occasion and wept while the shroud was put on display. Later, when he learned that Duke Charles of Savoy was ill, Borromeo journeyed to Savoy and found the Duke at death's door. He prayed fervently for recovery, which was granted. The Duke believed his recovery was due to the good bishop's prayers. In 1584, the year following that of the Duke's miraculous recovery, Borromeo's own health deteriorated. When he arrived home from his annual retreat, he requested to have the last rites and went directly to bed. After receiving the last sacrament, he said, quote, "Ecco venio," unquote, meaning, "Behold, I come." During that night of November 3rd through 4th, he died at the age of 46. He is thought to have died of exhaustion from his labors, the strain of too much work, and too little sleep having taken a toll on him. Now, here are a few quotes from St. Charles Borromeo. "Charity is that which no man is lost, and without which no man is saved. Stay quiet with God. Do not spend your time in useless chatter. Be sure to first preach the way you live. If you do not, people will notice that you say one thing, but live otherwise, and your words will bring only cynical laughter and a derisive shake of the head. If we wish to make any progress in the service of God, we must begin every day of our life with new eagerness. We must keep ourselves in the presence of God as much as possible and have no other view or end in all our actions but the divine honor. And finally, we must meditate before, during, and after everything we do. The prophet says, "I will pray, and then I will understand." This is the way we can easily overcome the countless difficulties we have to face day after day, which, after all, are a part of our work. In meditation, we find the strength to bring Christ to birth in ourselves and in others. Wow, what an amazing story. Here are a few questions to ponder. What struck you the most about what you just heard? What stood out to you about this story? How does the life of this role model of faith teach and challenge you in your spiritual life? And what lessons will you take with you in your daily life? We kindly ask that you please leave a comment on the YouTube post that corresponds with this episode or the podcast app that you're listening to this program on. Or you can send us an email to ministry@pilgrimcenterofhope.org. We look forward to hearing what you have to say about this program about St. Charles Borromeo. Now, you can download a printable pamphlet with this story, as well as a card with a quote from this month's saint, on our website at pilgrimcenterofhope.org. The link will be included in the podcast description. And just in case you're curious, that quote is, "Be sure that you first preach by the way you live." St. Charles Borromeo, pray for us. We are so grateful to Robert and Jane Atkins for sponsoring this program of Socials with the Saints, and we thank you for listening, and we thank you for joining us. We invite you to please come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of pilgrimages, conferences, and outreach. You can also see how you can support us and sponsor an upcoming Socials with the Saints. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or you can call us at 210-521-3377. That's 210-521-3377. Please make sure to stay up to date with details about these wonderful events. You can also do so by liking our Pilgrim Center of Hope Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our email list by visiting pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Until next time, remember, we are a pilgrim people, and on your journey, you are never alone in the communion of saints. May God bless you.